Thank you, Stephanie, and welcome to Dickinson and Carlisle this morning on what is, again, another beautiful day. We thank Ohio and those places out west for bringing this weather our way. I also want to welcome those folks who heard me. There are a few folks here who heard me during the course of our week in New York and the Northeast. Some of my remarks may overlap, but I think you'll see that I go in a new direction because there's so many things to talk about here at Dickinson. I do want to start, though, with a frame of reference that I use whenever I have one of these gatherings. And that is that I know that this is, for some, this could be a very anxious time as you look at colleges and universities and reach decisions. But I want to assure you that it should be an enjoyable time, a defining time. And that I know, looking out here and looking at you and your families and friends, that you are highly qualified and that you will find the right college. And it will be a fit. It will be a match as it should be. And you will do incredibly well as you apply yourself to that situation. But I would urge, as you make your preparation, as you do your research, that you leave space for something that many people belittle in this world that's driven by numerical accountability. And that is, you leave space for something inside you saying, this is the place. This is right, despite all that data that you've been dealing with. I'll give you my own example, as I have on the road, because I think it is telling. I'm a first-generation college student, meaning no one in my family, mother's side or father's side, direct line, ever went to college in our families, being either in other parts of the world or here in the United States for a long time. All farmers, most of the time in the South. And I was going to be the one to go on to college, finally. And as we were thinking about college, my family had really no particular guidance. Didn't talk about colleges and universities, the experiences my parents had at the dinner table, any of that. There was none of that. It was all a mystery. But on Saturday afternoon, my father and I used to watch a little bit of football, and then we would watch something called, and most of you probably don't remember this, called the GE Academic Bowl. It was on Saturday afternoon. It was two colleges going at each other on toss-up factual questions and bonus questions. Well, in 1965, there was a team from Dickinson College there. That team kept winning week after week after week, and it turned out that it was undefeated and won the GE Bowl, which we actually have here still at the college. And I show to the first-year students as we show the clip, the actual clip that I was watching from 1965. And oh, those commercials are so politically incorrect. You wouldn't believe them. You wouldn't believe them. I mean, we have a camel going across the desert smoking a camel cigarette, and the electric knife. That's another good one that they used to show in those days. But nevertheless, Dickinson was won, undefeated. So my father turned to me and said, "Oh, that looks like a good college. Maybe you ought to look at that." I said, "Yeah, I'll take a look at it." So I looked at the typical, I was in upstate New York at that time, looked at typical suspects, some very, very outstanding institutions, Middlebury, University of Rochester, Hamilton, those sorts of places. And then one evening, very late at night, my mother and I came into Carlisle. Obviously, always a little trepidation. This was not our territory. We didn't know our way about these institutions. And it was pouring. But it was one of those nights where it was steamy. So there was a haze, a fog over the entire campus, actually so interesting to me. And I saw those limestone buildings, and they were a little moist, and I saw this haze coming up, sort of like a London fog. And I just turned to my mother and I said, "That's it. This is it. I like fog." She just looked at me, and she didn't know. She said, "Okay, I guess that's part of the process, so you like fog." And so I applied early decision, and the rest is as you see it. Now I do know my way about colleges and universities. On the trip that we had to New York and surrounding area and to England, there were incredible turnouts, overwhelming turnouts. And there I often began my conversation, and some again in the audience today heard this. I talk about events in the media and in scholarly communities at the beginning of this century, when, for example, the Wall Street Journal and another author from Berkeley in a book, Shakespeare, Einstein, and the Bottom Line, said that Dickinson was among those colleges that should be watched in the 21st century, that it was poised to move in the 21st century, that it would offer students those skills, that knowledge they need to negotiate and flourish in this new century. And in so doing, Dickinson would begin to reposition itself among the historic notion of colleges and university hierarchy and desirability. But it would be different. It would be tough because people are set in their ways, and it takes 25 years for the public to realize that things have changed. 25 years to realize that. We see the change happening now. While very early, for example, we're experiencing a 49% increase in applications. We also introduced at one of our events, as Stephanie mentioned, New York City, a panel of recent alums who talked about the impact of Dickinson upon them as a person and professionally. One of our alums and alumna completed a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania and is pursuing a doctoral degree in media instruction for children. Another completed Teach for America and is currently working for the investment advisory group Blackstone. A third is working for Barclays Capital. And the fourth is employed by Harper's Bazaar. Happened to get that opportunity through an internship provided for a parent who was editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine, and put her in that position, and then she moved, displayed incredible expertise, and received a full-time job. The title of the event was the Dickinson Advantage. Now, audience member at the end asked a precise question. Define in a few words what precisely this advantage is. The young people talked around it. It was a wonderful question, the kind of question we like at Dickinson. You know, after all the talk, what are we about? What are we about? Various answers were offered up by the young alums, but I would like to have a go at it this morning. The Dickinson Advantage is a specific knowledge and skill set that prepares our graduates for informed engagement and leadership in the 21st century. We confront students with the way of proceeding in the world, especially right for their times and what is ahead. It is informed by a progressive liberal arts curriculum that is once imaginative and pragmatic. Our founder, Dr. Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration of Independence, wanted a useful liberal arts education. There is the interrelated focus on global sensibility, sustainability, and security studies throughout the curriculum and outside of the classroom. We believe that no matter what the profession, no matter what the engagement, Dickinson students must be continuously confronted with issues of global sensibility, sustainability, and security, which is going to be part of their world. An activist residential life that advances engagement, citizenship, and public service. Dr. Rush thought public service was an American patriotism, form of patriotism. An entrepreneurial leadership narrative born out of the American Revolution that at once provides an historic foundation for high accomplishment, ambition, and striving in a rapidly changing, culturally complex world. And lastly, a globally connected, active, responsive alumni network to assist with job placement and advanced educational opportunity. Our alumni network is out there. There are some young people from a fairly prominent political family here at Dickinson, the grandchild and child, or children. And I asked the father of the children here, I said, young people here, I said, why'd you pick Dickinson? Why for all your children? The answer was simple. My father and I searched colleges and universities. We looked for those that had strong, active alumni associations that understood the demands of the 21st century, understood how you had to make relationships, that it was not a transaction, it was a relationship. We found two, Princeton and Dickinson. And interestingly, Princeton is our historic sister college. Benjamin Rush was a Princetonian and wanted Princeton to be out here. So that was the choice. Now let me give an example, very brief example, of a young Dickinsonian, I think, who sums a lot of this up. This is Ben Teedy, Dr. Ben Teedy. He graduated but a few years ago. He went from Dickinson to Princeton. He was a biology major here. And he just completed this past summer his PhD in biology. You would think, traditionally, that you would go on to look for a job in teaching or in research in biology. But he had exposure to a 21st century narrative. And that 21st century narrative said that scientists are also going to have to be a bit different in the 21st century. So what did he do? He received a fellowship to stay at Princeton and get his master's degree in international affairs from the Woodrow Wilson School. A biologist combining now with diplomatic international skills, because that is what he thought is the key to negotiating the intricacies of the 21st century. In my speeches about the Northeast last week, I mentioned briefly some of the particular aspirations for our students in our 21st century skill set, which we call here the Dickinson Dimensions. Now, let me just mention these again briefly for some the first time, because they do something that most colleges don't do. We persistently, they don't always get it right away, but we persistently confront our students with a skill set that is a value system, has a value system behind it. Most colleges and universities stay 1,000 miles away from this sort of stuff. Again, education is transactional, not relational. Here they are, some of them. To write and communicate clearly, persuasively, and logically in several languages. To possess a global sensibility that permits students to be comfortable in the world and engage it without hesitation or anxiety. I'm an example of that. I'm taking off tomorrow very early for Mexico. I was just in Berlin and London, in between all the other things that I was doing, and I'm actually on the campus quite a bit, as the students might attest. But getting in a plane, going to Mexico, giving a speech, turning right around, it's part of the life of Dickinsonian. To listen well to others and possess the judgment that not all good ideas issue from you alone or from those who only speak English. Appreciate the quantitative dimension in human knowledge while simultaneously comprehending that it is highly dangerous to believe that all truth can be incorporated in a single digit. Appreciate that we live now in a world with potentially dwindling natural resources, so there is no need to consume more than you yourself need. Value the entrepreneurial capacity of human beings and cultivate it to purposeful, beneficial ends. And perhaps most strikingly, gain a comfort level with uncertainty and ambiguity, as these qualities will define much of the professional and personal life you will encounter. Indeed, uncertainty and ambiguity are now the two most essential qualities the U.S. military is seeking in its officer corps. It has realized that its officers are not prepared to deal with the ambiguity and uncertainty they are facing, and they are making mistakes. I myself was also a military officer. I just chaired the 10-year evaluation of West Point. I see very clearly that these skill sets are highly desirable and transferable. Gain the ability to distinguish fact from rumor and untruth, both in direct human contact and on the internet. Experience through student and residential life a useful program in which your residence hall becomes more than a place to sleep. It is a place where you, and sometimes for a long time, it is a place where you build communities, practice friendships, meet that which is different from all that you know to date, network, solve complex problems, plan events, manage budgets. Embrace a student life of intent. Internalize a sense of civility and respect for other peoples that considers the interactive protocols of a variety of cultures in more old-fashioned terms display good manners. And develop a personal voice and the confidence to use it to speak out with authority, yet civilly, on issues that matter. Now, while I often speak about how this 21st century skill set plays itself out in academic life at Dickinson, and you'll hear a lot about this today, I'd like to speak very briefly about how some of the skills infuse our aspirations for residential life and are guiding some new directions that you will encounter if you accept Dickinson. I would argue that American education has shortchanged its students by not delivering a residential student life with the intentionality needed to develop entrepreneurial, engaged, civil, and informed citizens. Dickinson College this year has taken on this challenge, and our students will, we believe, be the beneficiaries throughout their lives. We are planning to support our residential life with those facilities that are appropriate to these aspirations. During the last decade, we invested $100 million in our academic program, to include buildings. We contracted recently a quality of student life study that is just now offering to our trustees and the administration the opportunity to fund a bold, comprehensive plan to improve over the next decade residential halls, athletic dining, and student activity facilities. There is much enthusiasm among our community members for these advances. And as of this academic year, all first-year students will be engaging a useful experiential residential program sooner than previous classes. This commitment is very consistent with our founder, Dr. Rush's intention of a distinctively American undergraduate education defined first and foremost by developing engaged citizenship in a republic through employment, yes, we are job-friendly here, and through public service. First-year students, with guidance from staff and older students, will be planning and building a community through neighborhoods, resolving conflict, planning social events with their own budgets, serving on juries to engage minor social infractions in their community, and solving complex problems. The residential situation is a laboratory in which to build and extend those 21st century skills related to group and community life. These young people will be gaining an advantage beyond peers who have perhaps not had this opportunity and have only experienced a residential undergraduate life without intent, without focus, and without the challenge to build, manage, and regulate community. Everything we do here is wrapped in an historic, progressive narrative originating from Dr. Rush. There is a sense of clarity about what we intend for you. Everything is organized about that.